Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grandstand Sports Data. Today, we're going to be diving into the results of our models NHL season predictions for the 2024-2025 season. And trust me, this ain't just a humble brag or a roast session. We're going to show you which teams made us look like geniuses and which ones drained our bankroll. Now, we're also going to be touching on which handicapping factors actually mattered versus which ones were statistical junk. And by the end of this video, you'll know what worked, what didn't, and what we're upgrading for next season because betting without learning is just losing expensively. So let's get right into it. All right, here's how our model stacked up against reality. And as you can see, anything shaded in red means that the team overperformed, probably big time if it's in darker red. Blue means that they underperformed. The closer to the white, that's where the model had accuracy. So, looking at some of the biggest misses, you could see Nashville. We thought they'd be a contender. They skated like they were allergic to the puck. They basically missed by 40 points, and that was brutal. Now, moving on to Calgary is another one. Calgary, we basically had them dead. And they pulled a full blown resurrection and gave us the middle finger to the tune of plus 47 points. So they really overperformed just according, in comparison to our model and where we had them. We only had them getting about 49 points. Turned out they got 96. Now, Colorado, Dallas, and Edmonton. We nailed it there. A little bit in the white in terms of Edmonton. You could see -5, not too bad. What, about a couple of wins and a tie, or an overtime loss. Colorado got him dead on with 102 points, and then Dallas, as you can see. So, bottom line, we had some hits, couple whiffs as well, and a few teams that clearly didn't read our script. So let's break down who made us money and who made us, a little bit upset when it comes to the wallet. So the record says 20 correct and 12 wrong, but really what matters here, it's the value that we nailed and then the value that we missed. And let's start with the best hits. You can see the Minnesota Wild, we had them making the playoffs at about -135, and boom, they made the playoffs. That's the kind of pick that actually moves the bankroll at -135. Now, Pittsburgh Penguins, we picked them to miss at about -150, which isn't too sexy, but they missed, and then that made us cash. The Winnipeg Jets was another one we predicted correctly at about -175. And hey, a win's a win, so we'll take it, especially when the public doubts the model. But I don't know if it was necessarily doubting them. They are the President's Trophy winner. They did satisfy our pockets with that -175 bet. Let's move on to some of the ones that we missed on. A little bit upset about that. Tampa Bay, in terms of the Lightning, they are at +185 to miss, and they made the postseason. So we had a missing. That's the value left on the table. LA Kings, same story, +180, and they got in. So that stung our ass a little bit. Nashville Predators, they were horrible this season, and at -260, we got smoked on this model prediction. So while the prediction percentage looked solid, the true lesson here that you're looking at, you need to find your edge and only bet that edge. So if you played every bet on the board, you can see from here, you can go 20 and 12 and still be a losing better. So let's be smarter, not just safer. Let's look for that value and pick your spots. So, not our best showing here, as you can see from the point totals. We went 11 and 21, dropped about 11.31 units. And when we say we, I'm just talking about the model. We don't necessarily play everything that the model tells you. The model flopped here, just like Stuart Skinner in that playoff series. Sorry, I had to give it to him at least once. But let's focus on the bright spots here. You can see some of the high value hits, like Colorado Avalanche at under 104.5 points. Well, -120, we nailed that. Easy fade, solid return. Next, we're going to go on to Edmonton Oilers. They were under 108.5 points at that -115. That also cashed, and that number was just inflated by hype. On the flip side, though, some of our bigger ouch moments are going to come from Buffalo, as you can see. Over 87.5 points at -125. Missed that one. Buffalo, of course, crapping their shorts like every season. Calgary, on the other hand, at under 81.5. They looked sharp early and then fell apart late. Lost that at about -115, but they still got over in terms of that over 81.5 points. So this category was likely a little bit messy, as you can see. The takeaway, though, just like the make the playoffs bets, you need to be selective, right? And spot your edges. Don't commit to every play on the board. Let's move on to the model selection of the division winners, which we will touch on. All right, division winners. We went about 1 and 4, but 1 and 3, so 1 out of 4. But here's the twist: We actually came out, about a quarter for every $1 bet in terms of profit. So yeah, ugly bad in average, but somehow still paid the bar tab. I guess you could say. Barely paying the bar tab. Toronto Maple Leafs, they were our hit. We got them to win the Atlantic Division at plus 325, and we hit that one. It bailed out, basically the rest of the mess. And what is the rest of the mess? Well, it's the Carolina Hurricanes, Edmonton Oilers, and the Nashville Predators. They didn't win their divisions, and we whiffed on some spicy odds like that plus 460 on Nashville. Big swing, no contact. Still, with division bets, one hit at a plus money can cover a lot of sins. And thankfully for the model, it actually did here. All right, so now that we're here at the conference winners, this one's a little bit easier. Basically went 0-2. We took a swing on Dallas at plus 550 and also with Toronto at plus 750 to win their conferences. And both missed, as you can see. Like we said, 0-2, minus 2 in terms of the profit or loss. Down $2 for every $1 bet. So not a huge hit to the bankroll, but it is what it is. Now moving on to some of the Stanley Cup picks that we had. And in terms of the model in the preseason, it ran its Monte Carlo simulations for the entire season, and you've seen Dallas Stars at that plus 1100. Did they win? Absolutely not. So that was a -1 in terms of your unit size. Honestly, though, this is the kind of swing we're okay with, right? A plus 1100. We thought Dallas was going to have that revenge factor, especially after losing to Edmonton last season. That was a little bit of the fundamental side. We mostly go with the technicals when we run these Monte Carlo simulations in the beginning of the year during the preseason, kind of get a rough estimate to where we see these teams. We thought Dallas was going to take. We thought the model really had confidence in Dallas, and they didn't even know that they were going to get Rantanen through the middle of the year. So it was a good play, but not necessarily the play that wins. Well, here's the full scoreboard, right? We went 32 wins, 39 losses, and down about just under 20 units. And that's not a small haircut. That's basically a buzz cut, right? But here's the thing. This is a perfect example of why volume doesn't equal victory. We had some sharp calls and we had even sharper numbers. But spraying the board just isn't a sustainable strategy. More bets doesn't mean more profit. It usually means more ways to league units. So let's be real for a second. Building a model is a powerful tool, but it is not a guaranteed money printer. You have to remember that. If you blindly follow your projections without context or discipline, you're going to have bad years, just like this one. The market usually gets smarter, right? Edges shrink, and sometimes the model just doesn't account for the full story, like coaching, shifts, locker room dynamics, or even teams playing with a chip on their shoulder. So, what's the real lesson here that you can take? You need to find value, you need to shop for the best lines, you need to be selective with your bets, as you can see, and then you need to add those fundamental factors. And I know some of you statistical guys out there, oh my God, with the fundamental factors, they're really, really important. We're going to show you in the next coming slides. Because even when your model is solid, if you're not pairing it with smart betting habits and deeper insights, you're basically trying to outswim a shark, right? It's just not happening. So, was this just a down year, or is the market starting to catch up to this model? Either way, that's why we're now incorporating fundamental factors into our process, and in just a few minutes, we're going to show you exactly why they matter and how they may have saved our season in terms of just the model. Just got to remember that. We're talking about the model here. All right, so before we get into that, we're going to need to take a look at the money breakdown. And this is going to show you which teams were cash cows and which ones basically nuked your portfolio, right? Let's look at the top five. You got Winnipeg, Montreal, and Washington. They bringing home double-digit unit profits, especially Toronto too. You don't want to leave them out. Basically, a $1 bet would have made you this amount of money. So a $1, betting every $1 that you bet, you would have made $12.91 for Winnipeg, and so on and so forth. The reason why we show you the profit and loss in terms of units is exactly for that. For our audience that has a fixed betting style, say if you bet $50 on each game, all you have to do to know your profit, you see Winnipeg at plus 12.91, you multiply that by how much you bet on each game. In this case, we would have said 50, and it would give you your profit. So I hope you understand that. That's why we do it down to the $1. $1. Some people go, "Why? I don't understand why he only does the $1. It doesn't. Who bets a dollar?" It's not the point. I'm trying to help you with your multiples so that you can apply it to your own strategy and you can kind of get a gist of what we're explaining here. Next, we're going to go on to the bottom five, And it's headlined by Nashville and San Jose, who absolutely torch bettors this year, right? Minus $24.59 for every $1 bet, and then minus $23.98 for every $1 bet on the San Jose side. So that's like getting kicked in the bankroll twice. That sucks. Boston, Chicago, and even the Rangers made the list too. Popular teams, heavily bet, and totally underdelivered. And here's why this matters. If you're blindly backing name brand teams or fading the ugly ones with context, you're probably just lighting money on fire. This is where fundamental handicapping makes all the difference. And we're going to show you that in the next slide. All right, here's where it gets a little bit juicy, right? These are the core handicapping factors that we tracked all season, broken down by the three key stats or the three key metrics that we always talk about, right? Win percentage, profit and loss in terms of units, and then your return on investment or your rate of return. And as you can see, some factors delivered the goods, others were in the middle, and one was a dumpster fire that we will touch on a little bit later. Now, let's start with the big winners. The first one is back-to-backs, and all this is you're fading teams coming off of a back-to-back. It hit nearly at 62% and pulled in about 27 units with a solid 9.7 rate of return. The Z-scores, so we have Z-scores behind the scenes. Also, leave a comment down below if you want us to start showing you the Z-scores. And what the Z-score does, I can kind of tell you it in layman's terms, is the Z-score is a score that tells you if your predictive stat is just that. Is it predictive? Is it looking through the windshield? Or is it looking in the rear view mirror, which you don't want? Get it? You're kind of looking at past results and saying, yeah, I'm doing good at looking at these past results, but it's not necessarily predicting. Well, that Z-score is going to tell you. A good Z-score is usually above 1.5. I'd like to say the Z-score for win percentage on back-to-backs was a 5.69. That's right. That's huge. That's very strong. It's unit Z-score. So that was 1.73. Also great. So that's not noise. That's signal. This stays in the toolkit is a huge factor. Back to back is a huge factor in the NHL. We're going to go with 3 games in 4 nights. That's the next one. And you're fading teams that are playing their third game in the fourth night. That's hit over 57% with plus 19 units in a Z score of about 7.81. That's right, even better than that back to back. Basically, teams with tired legs equal your bankroll's best friend. You need to realize that in the NHL. Having fresh legs is a huge advantage. Next is going to be rest differential. This was basically our best statistical performer when you look at the back end. So when you look at the Z-score and you look at those units in terms of the profit and loss, right? So win percentage was 57.4. It was up 31.07 units. The Z-score was at a 12.6 on the win rate and was a 1.31 in terms of the units. So what's the translation there? This one's getting promoted. It's rock solid and it's a repeatable edge. So rest differential, huge in the NHL. Now, let's talk about contrarian plays. This was downright awful, right? It was 37.2 in terms of its win rate. It lost about 38 units. The Z-scores were negative across the board. What's the moral of the story here? We're going against the public in a small betting market sport. It's just not smart. You need to stick to your fundamental and technical handicapping. The NHL is a small market sport. There's no use for contrarian betting. So I was kind of doing this educationally for my NHL audience. Now, next we want to touch on NHL 25. And that's just trying to measure player quality. So people who get crazy about the video games, just get your boxes out of your shorts, just boxes out of your ass real quick. Let's move on to, do you think it helps or do you not? It's kind of a mix, right? It's down 105 units, which is bad. That's not good. And the Z scores a minus 3.37, which is not good as well. So this really, the rating's clearly not predictable on its own. But here's a little tease. What happens when you combine them with other factors? Could they actually become profitable? We're going to show you in the next slide. Now, to round it out, we're going to look at the Grandstand Sports Data model. It has a solid win rate at 57.6, but down 42 units overall. The Z-score for the win rate suggests that it was slightly above average at 1.12, but unit performance was poor in the minuses. So what does that mean? The model's directionally right, but pricing or discipline issues. So likely that usually tanks the results. Your best bet is to filter some of the odds when looking into our model and not just hitting submit bet blindly. So what's next here? We're keeping the rest differential, the 3 games and 4 nights, and the back-to-backs. Those are basically legit edges. On the chop and block, but we'll still kind of track them, is the NHL 25 player rating and then the Grandstand Sports Data model. So we may look for a better player quality stats of the NHL 25. And then for the Grandstand Sports Data model, we've been tweaking this model for about 5 years now, so we know its strengths and we know its weaknesses. And for now, we'll just monitor its performance. So what are we eliminating entirely? The contrarian plays. Obviously, small market sport. We just told you, NHL, it's a small betting market. And in small markets, the goal isn't to follow sharp money, it's to find your own edge. So, well, plus, when we combine contrarian plays with other factors, they tend to drag down the overall results. And we will show you that in the next slide. So, this is what's going to separate the pros from basically the guys who just do this for a hobby. You're not just tracking results, but digging into why something works and also why it doesn't. Next season, we're going to have fewer theories, more data backed killers. And here's where you come in. If you've got a scheduled angle, maybe motivational trend, or a fundamental factor that you think we should test, please drop it down in the comments below. We'll track it next season and we'll give you a shout out if it holds some water. All right, here's where things get real good, right? This is where we combined all the fundamental factors and tracked how they work together. So you're going to see their win rates, their units gained, also their return on investment. And then, yes, we rank them by their Z scores. So now you not only know their performance, but they're ranked based on how well they'll predict the future. And I use that very loosely because I know some people will go, oh, you really can't say that. Some of these don't have enough sample size, or you don't know just yet. And you would be correct in assuming that. But I'm just saying from their Z score, and that can all change with more data, but that's where the direction is showing you. Our top combo of the year is going to be back to backs and rest advantage. And basically, what this is you're fading teams coming off of a back to back, and you're betting on the team that has the more rest advantage. That hit at about 61.8% with about $25.22 for every $1 bet, profiting in for every $1 bet, and it was up 9.4 in terms of your rate of return. The Z score was a 5.66 for the win rate and a 1.65 for the units. The translation here is that this isn't just real. It is repeatable. This combo is going to be staying locked in. And for my audience in the NHL, please look for this. Please look for all of these going into next season so you can make these bets. Now, next up is going to be the 3 games and 4 nights. So you fade in 3 games and 4 nights. The team has the better team rating according to NHL 25, and then Grandstand Sports Data's model has picked that team to win. So when teams satisfy all 3 of those factors, they hit at 72.4%. They're up $13.06 for every $1 bet, and they're up 12.4 on their portfolio for their rate of return. The Z scores stayed strong at 1.55 for the win rate and 1.76 for the units. And this combo blended scheduling fatigue with player quality and our model, and it worked, as you can see. Now, do you just want a higher win rate? You would look at all of the factors except for contrarian. That would be your back-to-back, your 3 games and 4 nights, your rest differential, NHL 25 rating, Grandstand Sports Data. As you can see from that, it nearly almost had an 80% win rate. It was up $8.40 for every $1 bet. It was up 17.1%. Z scores were also solid at 1.55 for the win rate and then 1.96 for the units, right? That's huge. Smaller sample size, we have to mention, but the results are red hot. And this one's getting flagged for priority tracking next season. So you may want to push these up to that 5% play, right? This is what we're also trying to show you here through these illustrations. If this is going to continue to be red hot, just like how the Z score is telling you, it's up 17.1% on your investment throughout the whole year. You got to remember only 49 trials, but it's signaling to be red hot. So if teams, satisfy these factors, take a look at it. So, what does this all mean though? All 6 combinations shown here, they're basically profitable. They're backed by Z score strength, but they're basically ranked by Z score strength. They're built on real world fatigue and rest patterns, plus our internal ratings. But these aren't just flukes. These are systems, ladies and gentlemen, that we can build around. So going forward, we're going to be scaling these up, automating the tracking, and making these factor combos the foundation of our daily betting process. Think fewer coin flips, more surgical strikes, and hey, if you're building your own system, this is how you evolve. You need to find what works, layer your edges, validate with Z scores, and stay adaptable. This is how you move from betting emotionally to betting professionally. So that's a wrap here for our 2024-2025 NHL model results. The wins, the losses, and most importantly, the lessons. If you found value in the breakdown, help us out by hitting that like button. It tells the algorithm that this isn't just another betting video, it's one that actually teaches something. Also, hit that subscribe button if you're into smart data driven betting content, not just hot takes and TikTok pics. Also, comment below if you've got a system, a scheduling angle, or a trend that you want us to test. We read every single one of them. Finally, share this with your betting group chats, discords, or that one friend who keeps donating money to the sportsbook and blaming bad luck. We've got more breakdowns, more systems, and more plays coming, so stay tuned. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.